we are reading the seven levels of communication. And today we are going over chapters, well, the intro and then chapters 1 through 3. The intro wasn't really too much, just kind of a who he is, what the book's about, that kind of stuff. And chapter 1 starts with lunch of a lifetime. I like the whole quote at the beginning, what does not kill you makes you stronger. I'm so sorry, I'm dying something. So in chapter 1, Rick meets Michelle, and Michelle is she's a lender, and she is really excited about her lunch. It sounds like she's having lunch with a whole bunch of people, just kind of getting to know them. And at the end of chapter 1, we find out that the purpose of her lunch is to invite, I guess, all of these different people to these events, which I think is crazy because that's the same thing they tell us to do when we're recruiting, is invite to events. It's a great way to kind of get to know your people. There was a quote in chapter 1 that, a lot of times we talk about it's all about who you know. And there was a quote in there. It's not only about who you know, it's about how well do you know them and who they know. So getting the referrals from your database, but then reaching into your database's database is kind of what chapter 1 starts to allude to. I did not actually realize this was kind of a real estate driven book when I started it. I had no idea actually. But I think it's something that we could easily kind of spread across all spectrums. I think that, whether you're in real estate or not, keeping up with your folks is important. And I loved how they were kind of saying, okay, if your database has 150 people, and then they started doing the math of, how often do people move, or, how often do people do this or do that, and how quickly that database grows. They say that if you know 7 people in the world, you actually have access to 100 people, 100% of people in the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you know this person and they know that person, that person, that person, you can actually connect with
7
everyone.
degrees of Kevin Bacon. 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yes. Yes. So feedback on chapter 1. What did you guys kind of think? Was it a good intro? Anything you kind of took there that you may be implementing in your business strategies? Natalie, I know you had SOI on your 135 yesterday, so I'm hoping this chapter spoke a lot to you. But anyway, what did you guys kind of think about chapter 1?
I was very surprised it was chapter 1 because it felt more like an introduction to the book versus the actual meat and potatoes of the book. And so the format of how the book reads is very interesting because it's more of a storytelling than here's the 7 steps you should do to do this. And so you're hearing those steps, you're basically at that luncheon with them and experiencing it one-on-one. And definitely it was intriguing, I thought. And it kind of chapter 1 left you like in a little bit of a WTF, what's going on? Like, why are we having lunch? And it's like, oh, free lunch sounds great. And then into the next chapters, you realize why the significance of that meeting.
So I find it very interesting. I was kind of curious to find out like when the book was written, from a time frame standpoint, because it almost sounded like it was halfway relatable, right? Like they were talking about like a huge industry shift. And like, oh man, you must be crazy talking about out here like with a whole bunch of clients, I can barely put a sign in the yard for, and it just sits there for 6 months, so it was very interesting from that standpoint. Natalie, to your point, I feel like the books that are kind of written from a story format, it I kind of like them if I can relate to it. So like, for instance, as they kind of go through like the stories and whatnot, if I can relate to certain things, a lot of the times I feel like I learn it faster. So, but that was my first impression.
When do you think it was wrote? Like my thought was maybe 2010 perspective or.
So I was thinking, so to your point, right, like 2010, 2011, or it could have been written recently, and it could be like 2020 or 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be right now.
Laura, are you looking it up?
Mm-hmm. This was released in 2020.
Interesting.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So it's talking about the recent transition.
Yes. At least that's what my thing says. Oh, wait. No, that's Who Not How. I was on the wrong book. Y'all forget me. Sorry, I picked up the wrong book. Now it's yelling at me. Sorry, I'll look it up after we get off the call. I'm not good at this.
Oh,
Gotcha.
man.
Craig, any thoughts on chapter 1?
No, I can't remember which, you know, and I'm not sure if I missed some stuff. I apologize. I did listen. I did multitask a little bit, more than I'd like to normally when I'm reading the books, okay, or listening to the books. Usually I like to have nothing on, but today, this morning, has been a little crazy. So, but I did, my biggest issue that I want to hopefully get at is, at least for the beginning part, as far as the database and whatnot, which I am horrible with. And I need to get that gone. And the conversation, I said, well, he had mentioned, well, I started doing it this way, and now all of a sudden I'm back to the business cards, and like that whole kind of conversation, that's something that I need to get on myself and put together in a much better situation so I can have that proper communication levels with my existing stuff and kind of be reaching out to them, because I know that is that's a decent sized hole in my touches. I'm blanking on the good phrase for kind of going through your database and cultivating or mining your database, maybe. I don't have good mining strategies by any means, and how to communicate those levels on that stuff. So I'm hoping that this book will kind of get me involved and put me in a nice little understanding. And I think a lot of that potentially is going to be getting somebody that can help maintain and manage that communication level from the firm, which that's part of my issue to time. Time, you got to put it in. You got to do it. There's no excuse, and if you don't put the effort in time, it will wither.
Yep.
Agreed. It's hard. Databases are hard. I mean, I think we all struggle with databases because we feel like that's not the money-making activity, where actually it is your number one money-making activity. Your database should bring in more revenue than any other stream of income in your business. Because if you're working your database correctly, it should cost you little to nothing. Right? And it should be the easiest business you ever get, because those people already know, like, and trust you. So 2 things that he talked about in chapter 1, a 1-page document, a spectrum of solutions, and Google Alerts. So I'm interested. I actually want to go back and see how she does her Google Alerts. I have started not with Google Alerts. I don't really know exactly what that tool looks like and is, but I've actually started in KV Core, where like my entire database, if you're a closed client, you now get a text message from me, and that's set up automated, right? And it sounds like her Google Alerts are just her automated way of somewhat keeping up with that database. And I love.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the Google Alerts is like, I'll put your name into Google Alerts, and every time you hit the news somewhere, or you do something out there, or your name's brought up at the PTA, or whatever it might be on some document that's on the internet, I would get notified of your new presence on the internet.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So I actually used to have Google Alerts set up. And if you aren't very clear on what you want alerts on, so like for instance, Natalie gave an example where it's very clear, and the Google Alerts won't bog down your email. But if you're not clear enough, you'll get alerts for damn near everything, and they'll send you you can set it up to where they'll send you just send it on command every time you find it, and you'll get emails like every 5 minutes. Or you can tell it to do a summary or yada, yada, yada. But I've played around with it, but I've never gotten that specific. And so actually hearing it from the book and actually hearing you guys talk about it, I might re-implement it, but definitely at a different level, because it was.
Well, you can teach me how to use it, because I am all about alerts and keeping up with people. Better notes and better follow-up is something I implemented about 2 weeks ago. And I've gotten so busy that I'm almost like, I have a hard time right now almost keeping everything straight because I'm getting that busy. And a lot of it is, before I would do a task like, oh, this client needs me to call my tree guy to see what it's going to cost to get a quote. Well, I would call my tree guy and then I would check that task off. Well, my tree guy doesn't always call me back. Right. So it may go 4 or 5 days. So I've started being a little more purposeful, I think, of
So I just thought of something interesting. So because my business is in Google Workspace, I can actually set up alerts using like their cloud function. And so instead of it searching the web for your clients, it searches your workflows for clients. So it'll search your emails, it'll search your anything else you have tied to Google, it'll search your web, it'll search all that different kind of stuff, which would actually be pretty useful because to your point, Laura, that makes it easier for follow-up.
Yeah. Well, they always say the fortune's in the follow-up, right?
Right.
And I do like the idea of the spectrum of solutions, having a one-page document of why you are the best at your job that is just easy to pass out to people. I think you should have this as a printout. I also think you should have it as your elevator pitch, right? What does that one-page document look like when you are having it as a conversation so that you can quickly say, okay, here's what I do, and you don't stumble over those words? Because I will say that I know a lot of times when I don't have my scripts down and know exactly what it is that I want to say, even though I know what it is I'm trying to convey, it becomes wordy. And then people, you have about 3 seconds.
And sales pitchy.
Yeah, you're very wordy, honey. Yes, yes, yes. All right. Anything else on chapter 1?
It definitely made me think of my SOI though, of how well of a relationship do I have with all these folks? Getting emails from me versus getting hand wrote letters. Like it's such a significant difference. It's like no wonder I'm not the first person they call when they need a realtor.
Yes, yes, yes. Handwritten letters are key. We implemented that this year as well. We send out some mailers that aren't handwritten, but at the beginning of every month, my assistant sends me every birthday that's in my database for each month. And, it's funny, I have not gotten any business from it yet, but I have gotten a lot of phone calls. I had a wife call me the other day and yell at me for sending them a happy birthday card. I must have screwed her husband in her birthday month up.
How dare you?
Just so you know that it's Joe is born in October in August and I'm born in October.
Sorry.
So I fixed that and sent him another birthday card, and now she will get a second one. But it really does make the phone ring. Those handwritten cards are awesome. As far as a way to kind of connect with people. Nobody's doing it anymore. And I think it was actually chapter 3, they kind of went over the 6 rules of how to handwrite a card. Chapter 2, J. Michaels speaks. Life. What does that stand for? What is the acronym? Learn, implement, fail, and evaluate. I loved that. What a good way to look at life. Learn, implement what you learn, fail, and then evaluate. Fix it. All right. In this chapter, they are at the convention and Rick is learning that Michelle is new to this way of life. What do they call it? Generosity generation. She is new to that perspective. I like the definition or the name that they give that. I think it's a good come from contribution. That's what we used to say at Keller Williams all the time, right? When you're talking to people, always come from contribution. How can I help you? I'm not here to just say, yes, I'll help you buy and sell a house. I'm here to help you do whatever it is you need. And to Rick, it seemed like these people were somewhat cult-like. And I think that's very easy to kind of see or to feel like when you're not involved in something and you're watching other people be very involved in something. But I think a lot of times, that cult-like perspective, it's what works, right? It's not that they're in a cult. It's not that they're all doing the same thing or saying the same thing. It's because they've actually put these practices in place and these practices are working for their business. So one of the things that I thought was kind of cool in this chapter was the do it now bands. I don't know if you guys have ever used a tool like this, but they're amazing. So years ago, I took a self-help class, and one of the things that we were working on was lack of negative self-talk. and they actually had us wear a rubber band. And anytime you said something negative about yourself, you're supposed to pop yourself. Now, does it hurt? Not really, but it's just enough of a sting to where your brain will actually change what it's going to say about itself, right? If you're going to pop yourself every time you do it, then every time you feel that little bit of sting, it's like, oh, a negative thought creates pain, and your brain will organically switch that negative thought to a positive thought. And it's crazy how fast your brain will switch something off. Last night, Craig broke the sea-doo, and we were in the middle of the lake, and he just killed the whole damn thing. And then the engine started beeping at us, and we literally had like a 3-hour ride back at idle speed. Like we were literally in the middle of the lake. But we were laughing because initially the beep to the engine was obnoxious. Like every 15 seconds, it was like, beep. Like, okay, we get it, you're broken, but we can't get there any faster. You're only going idle speed. And by the end of our ride, we were both like, oh, we're enjoying this ride. We normally don't go this slow on the lake. And we kind of made the best of it. And I don't think, we both are talking, we don't even hear the beep. And so little tools like this, your brain will switch so quickly that little tools like this, just do it now. Having that on your wrist every time you are procrastinating or not doing something that you're supposed to be doing, that's just a quick reminder, and you tap it and you say it and kind of move on. And then something else that they talked about in this chapter was begin with the end in mind. I think that has been a consistent message in almost every single book that we've read this year. So, and then the communication pyramid, I'm pissed that we didn't get a full definition of that. So that's my that's my thought process on that. What about you guys? What was kind of your thoughts on chapter 2 and the stuff that they talked about in there?
I definitely like the goals in mind because that's what my biggest issue of the day is what am I trying to get accomplished of the day? I mean, I know I'm from 8:30 until that's obviously a very brief period of time, but it's still the same concept of making sure I'm moving forward on a day-to-day basis, let alone obviously on a yearly basis, and yearly goal is kind of the same thing. But my desk right now is just bananas with all the different things that I'm kind of working on, and start the day with, okay, at least get these 3 things done. And then everything else is somewhat icing on the cake. But if I don't say I want these 3 things done, I got a lot of stuff done, but I feel very unaccomplished because the 3 things I really need to get done, I didn't get done, but I did everything else. I mean, sure, there's a little bit of downtime here and there, but for the most part, I am running, or the same way. I mean, I think we're all kind of from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, we don't stop. And sometimes it takes me 2 days to realize what I just did on that 2 days ago. I'm like, man, and for my brain to catch up. And so having that goal list and having that, okay, here's kind of what was my accomplishment? Why am I doing all this stuff today? And then obviously expanding that into here's the week, here's the daily ones. Okay, now what do I want to get done this week? What do I want to get done this year? What do I want to get this decade? I think are extremely important. If you have no goals, you never meet them. I mean, that's kind of,
yeah. Can I take this back a couple books ago where we used to do our 3 goals for the day?
I wasn't here yet. I was not privileged on the earlier conversations. I was just finally allowed to.
You haven't watched the YouTube shows?
Yeah, go back and watch our YouTube. They're all posted.
So the bands are $20 on their site. It's really cool. But this chapter honestly made me think back to Work the System. It was one of the books I love that book. But it just reminded me also to go back and look at my guiding principles again. Because one thing I have been good about is I feel like certain things, it's just like small tweaks make so much of a difference. But then you don't think about it while you're in the trees. So for instance, at the end of the day, I'll write in my notebook and I'll do what are the 3 things I need to get done for the next day. But usually I've done the schedule already. So by the time I've written the 3 things down, I don't ever really move it to the schedule. So I just swapped it, right? And so now I get so much more done. But then sometimes it's once you start to find that free time, it's well, what do I do? Do I take a break? Like, and so sometimes going back and looking at those guiding principles, because one of them was for him, do it now. And so sometimes I'll go look at it and I'll kind of look through and I'll see that. And I'm like, oh, well, you know what? There is something that I was going to do later, but I can just do it now. So it just honestly reminded me to kind of go back and look at that, which I think will kind of keep me guided as I continue.
I think the do it now perspective is so important, just because so many of us, like, when I coach my agents, like, what did they give me all these things that they did for the day, but very few of them are actually the money making activities that are going to fill their pipeline, you know? And so I think do it now, to Craig's point, having those tasks that, okay, this is what has to get done today, and everything else is just icing on the cake. So it's a good perspective to have as far as accomplishing the goals.
I'm still waiting. It feels like a pyramid scheme, though, this book. Like, where are they going to sell us in the end?
Coaching.
Yes, I know. For $40,000, we will coach you for 12 months.
It's kind of money. Trying to make money.
Yes. Well, if they have good coaching, maybe it's worth it. I've had one coach and she was not worth it. I'm still waiting to hire one that is. Awesome. Anything else on chapter 2? Nope. Well, then, as you think about chapter 2 and as you read this, I am going to encourage everybody to kind of think about some small tools that you can implement in your businesses and in your life. Just because, again, the wristband, the note cards, those things are so small, but they make such a huge, huge difference. All right. On to chapter 3, communications with yourself. On this one, they talked a lot about, they kind of started the chapter off talking about your big why. So I cringed when he talked about his big why. And if you've ever heard me give my big why speech, you know why. He talked about knowing your goals, right? So what is your referral goal? If you're looking for referrals, how many referrals are you expecting to get? I do agree with him there. I think when you write a goal, it should always be in SMART format. And part of that is having it measurable. Because if your goal is to get referrals, well, great. How do you know if you achieve that goal? If you got 2 referrals, does that mean you achieved it? Well, probably not. You're probably going to get 2 referrals organically anyway, even if you suck, right? Like people don't like to deviate from what they know. And so people will potentially refer you if you've got somebody who needs your services 2 days after you closed with them. Oh, use my agent. She got me the closing table, and you're happy you just bought or sold a house. Look for people to connect with. Something else he talked about in this book, which I think is also a common theme, or in this chapter is also a common theme. 5 things you're grateful for. I was doing that at a high level and I stopped, and I don't know why, but I think starting and ending your day off with the 5 things that you're grateful for is so important. Like, I think looking back at the things you achieve and the success that you have, I think it's very easy for us to feel like we're not succeeding. And I think looking back at those things just is kind of an eye opener. And then he goes over the 6 steps in which he feels is important for writing letters. So use unbranded cards with something that represents you. I hope you are all doing that at a super high level. It is very inexpensive to order from a place called Got Print. Go get a dog like Mazzy and make her your ambassador. Blue ink. So I always hear, when we sign stuff, it's got to be in blue. That way they can tell it's wet. I never thought about writing my cards in blue, but it makes sense. It's one of those subconscious things that will change somebody's perspective and they don't even understand or know why. Because sometimes you do get cards that look like they're handwritten, but they're printed and they're always in black. Avoid the word you. Use the word you and avoid me, I, or my. So I have always heard, do not put the word I in your vocabulary, take it out for business. Like that's a pretty common thing. Be specific in your phrase or in your praise. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Leverage the power of positive projection. Slope the words up from left to right. That's the second time in my life I've heard that the slant of your wording or your handwriting actually makes a difference. And the power of the PS, or that's kind of your call to action, right? So those were kind of the 6 steps. And then, oh, and something else he pointed out was the breakdown before the breakthrough. Has anybody ever been there before? Like, oh my God, I am about to explode. This really sucks. And it feels like rock bottom. And then next thing you know, you're back on top. So those were kind of the things that he went over in chapter 3. What were your thoughts on all of that?
I feel like the stuff that always gets me to the breakdown is just making changes to certain things that I already know need to change anyway. It's just like, ugh, but I don't want to stop eating shitty food, you know? It's, but like, you know, it's like by the time, I feel like by the time you finally like break down enough to where you're like, okay, well, like my health's not going to get any better, or the clients aren't going to get served any faster, or you know, if I continue doing X, Y, or Z, right? So it's like I feel like for me, a lot of the times that's usually what it is. It's like something unproductive that I'm either spending too much time on, or you know, something related.
Mm. Yeah, it was interesting to listen to his meeting with his person and get that experience. It's, you know, again, it's almost like you're him, or and going through this with him, and again waiting for that sales pitch on the end. But it's neat because he is giving such good details, and it's almost like you got to go to the convention. Now you're getting that almost free lesson from him too, and so it does want you want to learn more. You want to see what's next in that chapter or the following chapters.
I can see Nancy's ear.
Any thoughts, babe?
I'm trying to be quiet on this one because I think I screwed up and didn't get this far.
Oh, got it.
So I'm trying to be nice, and or nice to my own ego that I dropped. Like, yes,
Got
I
it.
promise. Like this, I'm really excited about the book because this is an issue that I probably have a hole in my whole life with. So I'm gonna be much better next week.
You're so funny. Well, my biggest takeaway from this chapter was the big why portion. I kind of want to circle back around to that. I do not agree with him. I do not think your big why should be your family. Most of the people that I teach with also agree. Your big why should extend past your family, but I do think that when you are communicating with yourself, like that is a great place to start with why you're doing, you know, what you're doing, what gets you out of bed every morning. My problem with using your family, your spouse, your kids, what happens if they leave? Right? Kids grow up and go to college. And if your big why is to put your kids through college and they don't have debt, well, once that happens, you have to start that wheel spinning again and find another reason to motivate. So to me, I think that it should start with a big why that is something that can either evolve or be a big why through your entire life, right? My big why do I get up? Why do I do what I do? Well, I want to have a positive impact on 1 million people throughout my lifetime, right? I want to have an impact that is so big and so positive that in some way it changes their life more in a positive direction, right?
Wow.
And that goes, it starts with my husband and my kids, but it extends past them, because if, you know, tomorrow the world explodes and I happen to be on the one part that doesn't and they're all there, well, then I still need a big why.
I agree.
So
I feel
that's,
like the family's not not enough. I feel like to your point, it's definitely a big start. And I feel like for most people this is true, but like my big why was always did start with my family. But then from there, it's like, you know, well, to your point, it's like if you're focused on your big why enough, you know, like you what else is there to do with the family? But it's just like, okay, well, to Laura's point, what if you expand your family, right? A big why towards, you know, making a positive impact in a specific way or just in general.
Right.
So
yes. Very good. Very good. Well, I hope everybody starts writing their handwritten cards.
Mm-hmm.
I do practice what I preach, although I now will be using blue ink. Every single card will have a PS. I have to figure out what PS is going to look like and what that call to action is going to look like. But those are definitely all things that are going to be on my to-do list, and I hope that they are on yours as well. This is a very short book. So question to you guys. So chapters 4, 5, and 6 is about an hour and 10 minutes. If we add chapter 7, it makes it about an hour and 30, which then would make the final week right over an hour. Or we could put chapter 7 in the last week, which would make that about an hour and a half. So we can either read about an hour this week and an hour and a half next week, or flip that, an hour and a half and then an hour. What would you guys rather
Let's
do?
go through 7 this time.
You want to go through
Hour
7?
and a half.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 4, 5, 6, and 7.
sweet.
And hopefully we find out exactly what the communication pyramid looks like. If not, I'm going to go find it. Peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Night, y'all.